Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Business Talk Library, and today I have another great guest on. Now, part of the reason this guest stood out to me is because I think he's doing some great things on social media, definitely on LinkedIn, and he has a great message and a great story. I mean, he's a best-selling author. I mean, he is definitely helping so many other businesses navigate those complex things that every business runs into. But he has some very great ideas, some very out of the box thinking. So I definitely want to welcome to the show Ike Ikokwu.
Ikoku, you almost was
Ikoku.
there.
I was trying to make sure that Ikoku.
Yeah,
Got it.
Ikoku.
Got
W silence. He
it.
owes you Ikoku.
And you know what? That's on me because Ike is a fellow Nigerian brother, and you know what? My father-in-law would be very disappointed in me right now.
Just call a spade, why don't we, huh?
Ike, welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, Terrell, thanks for having me, brother. Good to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, before we jump into, the book and your coaching business right now, tell us a little bit about kind of, your background before you got into coaching.
Yeah, man. So I'm a good old-fashioned college grad with an accounting degree. So, I graduated college and just stepped into the professional accounting world and was fortunate to work for two of the big six accounting firms early in my career. And once I got past audit and tax and figured out I like tax, I figured out even further in tax, I like the personal financial planning aspects of that. So I got to work in those divisions at KPMG and E&Y. And while we were helping save our high net worth clients hundreds and even millions of dollars from just advanced tax and financial planning strategies. I was back in my room taking notes and saying, let's see what elements of this I can incorporate into my own little, pie here. So I applied a lot of what I learned, and I was really fortunate to have had some early successes financially in my life and in my career that have served me well. I've had a lot of wins and I had a lot of losses, and I probably learned more from the losses than I have from the wins. That's for sure.
Gotcha, gotcha. No, I mean, when you think about that, like, you're doing all this work and helping, the company, plan for their high net worth individuals. How many of your counterparts do you think were going back and saying, you know what, how can I use this myself?
I don't know that there were very many, man. It's one of those things where you just recognize at an early age how you're wired and what you kind of have a natural predisposition to. So I mean, I go back to like being an 8-year-old kid at home, spending not summers but Christmas at the village with my grandfather, who I would dub the early Oracle of Omaha. He was Buffett before Buffett was born. The dude had like investments in real estate business and just all kinds of stuff. So one of the things we do is around the Christmas time, we'd gather all the extended family members, and all the little kids would just kind of parade and show how well they've done for school, and they'd get rewarded with oftentimes, most times money, sometimes gifts and toys. So youngest of three, my older siblings would take their cash and go buy toys or clothes. I took my cash and I grabbed my dad's old briefcase and I turned that mug into a makeshift bank, and I started saving money at an early age. So I figured out how to save money early. I didn't figure out how to keep the robbers, older brother, older sister, from breaking into the bank.
Gotcha. Now, tell us a little bit about, now your book about winning the money game. So I
Yeah.
definitely want the audience to hear about that.
Sure, sure. It's a great book. Growing up in the financial services industry, you quickly realize like there's a war going on in that industry. And that war is pitting what I call the safe side of the fence against the more securities-based side of the fence. They're pitting themselves against each other, and the consumer is stuck in the middle, being confused as to what the proverbial pathway should be. And so when I had my first run to making seven figures and losing that, I learned some lessons along the way, and I paid a lot of attention to what the financial services industry is doing. And one of my favorite quotes is this whole idea that if just because you have all the dogs barking up the wrong tree doesn't necessarily make it the right tree. And so, whether you like that analogy or like old Robert Frost's idea of kind of taking the road less traveled, I figured that there was a lot of stuff that they were breathing down the necks of the American consumers that weren't necessarily entirely in the best interest of the consumer. And so I figured that stuff out and identified what I called the 9 financial myths and just kind of charted the course from going from bankrupt in 2003 to becoming financially independent in 2008 at the age of 34. And I outlined those 9 myths and kind of shared some strategies and ideas and things that I used to kind of help get to that position. So
Gotcha, gotcha. Now, where can people find the book?
yeah, readily available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere books are sold. Just typing "Winning the Money Game," Ike Ikokwu, and it'll direct you right to it. You can also get it obviously off of my website too as well. So
Awesome, awesome. Now, I really want to jump into your coaching business because that was one of the areas where you and I connected,
yeah,
and then after that, I definitely want to talk about some of the content that you share on LinkedIn there, so people can follow you there as well. But for the coaching business, what's your approach to coaching, and like, what do you, I guess, what made you start that type of business?
it was birth partially out of just interest and intrigue, but also out of a lot of failures. So a little bit about my journey in terms of just after having that phenomenal run, being financially independent in 2008, in 2014, things changed. Like the entire ship got turned upside down. And so suffered 2 business betrayals, lost 7 figures plus, and clients of mine and myself, we ended up becoming victims of a Ponzi scheme. SEC got involved. The guy who perpetrated the fraud fled the country. I'm an investment
Wow,
advisor at the time. And so 2 years after the incident, they figured they're going to hold me responsible. Like I was, easy,
wow,
low hanging fruit, for lack of a better word. Forget the fact he lost hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of his money. So going through that experience and just seeing my whole world get turned upside down and the industry and the business that I love that was providing for my family basically be taken away from me, I had to start over from scratch. I had to resurrect my old consulting coaching business, and that hadn't been my primary focus. And so along the ways there, I'm just trying to figure out, how do you pivot? Like I went through my COVID-19 experience way before it showed up in 2020, right? So I was trying to figure out, like, how do I pivot back then? And I studied and spent just a lot of money with different coaches and consultants and stuff. And a lot of what was being broadcast as the proverbial pathway to go wasn't necessarily what was necessary for somebody just starting out needing to get to that first benchmark of maybe breaking 6 figures. And so after a lot of trial and error and just, a lot of frustrations, I finally figured out a few things that work in getting anybody from like launch to their initial 6 figures and then even beyond. And so there's 3 real basic components to my coaching practice. I'm a big believer that while strategies and tactics are important, right? Those things maybe represent about 20% of your overall success. The other 80% comes from really creating an indestructible mindset. I call it a limitless mindset. And so mindset ends up becoming a huge component of anybody's success. And so we look at it both from the standpoint of how you're going to be successful in what you're called to do and what you're doing, but also how your relationship with money also determines the level of success that you have. So those are 2 of the 3 components of my coaching program. The third piece is what we call client attraction mastery, and it's just teaching people how to attract their ideal client, their most valuable audience, the people who resonate with their story, who value the gift that is within them and the level of transformation they can bring into their lives by serving them, and are like your biggest cheerleaders. And not everybody necessarily has the I call the privilege and the benefit of working with people that they are just on fire and excited about, right? They just wake up every morning and like, man, I got Terrell on the calendar today, man. It's gonna be a good day because we just vibe. He gets me, he appreciates my work, and he values what I do. And so that's a small component of some of the stuff that we work on in there.
gotcha, gotcha. There's something that's very interesting that I think that you pointed out, and I had this conversation with some people is that, I say that I'm not sure if, some people are really prepared for what their success journey will look like. And one of those early things that someone told me is that, what you'll realize is as you start becoming successful in whatever you do, you'll realize the new challenge becomes being able to, sustain what you've achieved. And I think
Yeah.
about with your story of, a lot of people can say that, hey, I can help you get from, where you are to, huge success. But I think the challenge that I was asked is like, will they be able to help you develop the right processes and put the right things in place to sustain that after you reach that pinnacle?
Yes, so, so crucial. There's some key drivers for success that I found, which is one, you got to be investing in learning. You got to grow. Like, John Maxwell says, he talks about the law of the lid, and he says basically, as your level of leadership goes, whether you're self-employed or whether you're running an organization, so the rest of your organization goes. So from a scale of 1 to 10, you're stuck at a 7. You can't expect that organization or anybody else who's supporting you to rise above that because they're looking to you. So self-leadership and, in making some very intentional investments in learning, absolutely critical for success. The second one is coaching, and that's usually a bit of a stumbling block for a lot of entrepreneurs because the very asset, the very thing that is like your strength, the idea that, I can build a better mousetrap, I'm going to set out on my own and do something, can actually be your biggest weakness because that very independent mindset can preclude you from getting help in the form of coaching and mentors early on in the process. So you can do like Warren Buffett says and learn from mistake, which is the best teacher, but it doesn't have to be the mistakes you make, right? And so, to your point, it's about being able to identify how to get past those different benchmarks and not just attain success, but actually sustain it for the long term.
Gotcha, gotcha. Now, speaking of that, when you're working with different business owners, I mean, when it comes down to, other than what you just said about, being able to get over, that independent mindset, are there any other, like, maybe just one other key area where, entrepreneurs kind of, you notice they hit a consistent roadblock that they struggle to get over or work around?
Yeah. I think the biggest one is understanding the distinction between being an excellent uh, business service. And so whatever the widget is that you make, like you may know how to do that thing left, right, and center. You may can do it better than everybody else. But your degree of success isn't going to be measured by how good you are at creating said widget or providing said service. Your degree of success as an entrepreneur, it's how good you are in branding yourself, in being able to communicate your value proposition, and being able to attract those people who resonate with exactly what it is. So being an independent marketer of said widget is actually more important than being the best manufacturer of said widget.
Gotcha, gotcha. Now, do you find that people struggle with that? Because, for me, even myself personally, like knowing, like, having a CPA,
Yeah,
corporate finance was my background. Like marketing was the thing that's like, I really didn't spend much time
yeah,
until I started my own practice.
yeah. We got this great misconception about marketing, right? Like we feel like it's, these uh, weird people that float around on the face of these earth that know how to market or sales. And maybe when we think about sales, we start thinking about the used car salesman. It's like, I don't want to be involved in all of that. But if you really think about it, like we were born as marketers. I mean, you think about a baby, right? When a baby doesn't know how to talk, if they're hungry, like they will voice their concern and tell the whole world and anybody who's within the vicinity of like 12 feet knows we got to pay attention and give that baby what he needs, right? The same thing with like, older people. I always give the example of like a bunch of girls going out on a girls' night out, and maybe they go watch their favorite movie, and maybe it's got Denzel or it's got Keanu Reeves, doesn't matter who it is, right? Those girls get out of that movie, and if they come within a millimeter of you, they will convince you you need to go see that movie. It may not be because it's the best movie, maybe it's because of the character in the movie, but it's almost like they become personal evangelists for that movie. Well, in business, you have to become an evangelist for your business. Now, why
Mhm.
most people, one of the reasons why many people may not be there is because they're not really tapped into the purpose.
Got
Like
it.
they're
Wow.
doing something, but it's not directly in alignment with the very reason why they exist. And I know this just, being in the financial space. I mean, we used to help people who would spend 30 years at a GE with the idea that once I hit 65, I'm going to start living, right?
Mhm.
And like, what a waste of time to spend 30 years of your life and kind of put that on hold, tuck that away and go, okay, I'm going to start living life. And so once you like identify your purpose, it's kind of like you get a toy, you decide to go put it together and you fail woefully at it, but like you go back to the manual and you read it, it's like, oh, here's how this stuff is supposed to operate. So it's kind of like that moment where it's like somebody's revealed the owner's manual to you. Like, you know why you're taking up space here. You know the level of impact and transformation you're supposed to be bringing into people's lives. And you know how selfish it would be not to do that because you see the entirety of your life and how it's been shaped to create this moment in time where you now step into this world and do this incredible thing. Again, it's like the most selfish thing not to tell anybody. That's one of the reasons why I choose to work with purpose driven entrepreneurs, because working with those entrepreneurs, like their why, their spiritual and life purpose is so huge, right?
Mhm.
That it just continues to drive and motivate them. And you can't shut them up as it relates to what they're supposed to be doing. So, marketing and sharing what they do is seldom a problem.
Awesome, awesome. And now, speaking of that, I mean, as if you're watching and you're listening, I mean, you can hear the wisdom that's coming out of Ike right now. I mean, you definitely know that this is not a man that just decided to put a name on a Facebook page or Instagram or a LinkedIn page. Like, he's serious about this. And speaking of that, I want to talk about some of the content that you share, because some of the wisdom that you're sharing in this short interview, I mean, you share as you put out content on your own page. Like,
Yeah.
what's some of the stuff people can expect to hear if they go find you online?
Sure. So I'm a big believer that when people look to consume content, they're looking for one of three things. They're either looking to be inspired, they're looking to be educated, or they're looking to get a good laugh. Because let's face it, adulting is hard. So when I wrote my book, I had the benefit of hiring a PR firm, and I spent thousands of dollars getting a lot of PR. I ended up on a bunch of radio stations and TV stations. Got a really, really bunch of really, really good press. That was, almost a decade ago, right? 2012. And what I know is that in this day and age in which we live in, while PR firms still have a foothold in the market and provide a valuable service, you are your biggest PR department. Like, in the age in
Gotcha.
which we live in, you can generate so much PR, and it's necessary to generate PR. And the way to do it in a way where you almost create predisposed buyers is to become very clear about how content marketing fits into your overall strategy that you're using for your business. Because all the hundreds of thousands of dollars that I've spent on marketing and mentors and coaches, a lot of those people I found out about through their content. And I consumed a lot of their free content to the point, like, when I was ready to buy, it was just a matter of like, where do I sign up, right? I didn't need to be sold anything because I had predetermined on my own that they had delivered so much valuable content that it wasn't a matter of if I needed to work with this individual, it was just when, right? And that's the benefit of self-generating content that specifically positions you as an expert, where you are constantly inspiring, educating, or entertaining your ideal client audience. That's a very, very valuable strategy to incorporate and just helping you grow.
Gotcha. Now, where can people find you online, and where can they find you on social media?
Definitely on LinkedIn, I spend a lot of time there, but online, probably one of the next big things that we're really excited about is we've been doing these 5-day challenges. We call them the six-figure blueprint. And over 5 days, we guarantee you spend 3 hours a day with us, and you will have a blueprint on how to build or add the next 6 figures in revenue to your business.
Wow.
And so you can find out more about that at thecoachanaire.com. So that's TheCoachanaire Institute, the Coachanaire Institute, INSTITUTE.com. A little bit of a play on the who wants to be a millionaire, it's who wants to be a coachinaire. So definitely, guys can find me on that URL as well, and can sign up for the next challenge that we have in October.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Now, before we wrap up, one question that I like to ask all of the guests that come on is when you think about, your journey and I mean, and you specifically are working with tons of entrepreneurs, what are two pieces of advice that you would share with entrepreneurs?
Sure. One, never stop investing in yourself. And investing in yourself looks like not making the mistake of thinking because I got my degree in this particular year and I have my master's and my bachelor's that education and learning is over. You have to constantly be investing in yourself just to, one, be able to surpass what the competition is doing, but to grow personally. So that's really, really important. And two, um, don't be afraid to try new things. There's a saying in sales training that says always be closing in terms of like the rapport and some of the stuff you do with people. As a business owner, you have to always be testing new strategies, new scripts, new sales processes, new systems, investing in technology to see what works for where you're at the level that you're at. So always be testing and make significant investments in yourself. Both of those things will serve you well.
Awesome, awesome. Well, definitely thank you. And as you were talking, one other question that came to mind. Now this one is more on, I could say, or more of a selfish or yeah, selfish question on my part is when it comes down to, I mean, because as all the listeners know, my business as a doing, corporate finance consulting and accounting consulting for corporations, like, you know, when it comes down to seeing businesses, and do you feel like they understand the accounting on the finance side of their business well?
No, no, that's the other thing that we teach people. Like you have to make like good decision making is another foundation for successful businesses. And some of the best decisions you can make are sitting right in front of you in terms of what your P&L and your balance sheet is telling you. Like for the few businesses out there who have like a systematized process of gathering that information, most of what I see is, okay, the monthly reports are in. Awesome. Go grab the binder. Let's stick it in that binder and put it away. And it's like, if you're not measuring what's going on, how can you be in a position to affect change in your organization? And so understanding the dimensions of what financial information actually has to say about your business, as to what's working, as to what's not working, as to what needs improvement, as to being able to almost forecast and predict issues that could come up, that is a skill set that if the owner does not have, they definitely need to be leaning in on their controller, their CPA, the team that they have around them to help them make better informed decisions that will drive the needle of where they're trying to go with their business.
Awesome, awesome. Well, definitely thank you for coming on the show, sharing all of your wisdom and your feedback. And we'll definitely include the link so people can find you online and they can also get involved with the challenges with the Coachanaire that you guys have going on. So again, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much, man. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Talk Library. If you like what you heard and you want to hear more, be sure to click the subscribe button and follow us on all social media platforms as the Business Talk Library.